Welcome to the Steelers Breakdown from PennLive, featuring PennLive Steelers beat reporter Nick Farabaugh. We are coming to you from St. Vincent College, where the Steelers just held their first padded practice. Now, of course, you wouldn't know it. We're in a soundproof booth because we had a little bit of weather today. Rained all early morning. Then when the Steelers took the practice field, the sun shone. And fans were in the stands watching the first padded practice, which, as it was winding down, the dark, ominous clouds rolled in and the skies unleashed. I don't know if that's some kind of divine commentary on the state of the Steelers, but there were some momentous things that happened. The quarterback, the 1A predicted quarterback, Russell Wilson, had his first meaningful snaps in practice in pads. There was a injury among one of the thinnest positions that the Steelers have that could have some major ramifications. And the big guys went mano a mano in quest of Steelers supremacy. We turn to Nick for your expert commentary on what you saw today and how this training camp has unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, today was the first real day I think you can put stock into, John. It makes sense, right? I mean, you think about pads, and it's more football-like than it is in shorts. And so we're getting closer. You can't really get full football until, preseason and even regular season and when you are evaluating these guys, but we're starting to see more and more. And I think it's a really good sign for the Steelers that this was the best day for Justin Fields. I think for Russell Wilson, his first meaningful snaps went extremely well. Folks, he took 8 team reps. One of them was just handing the ball off in a team run. I said that I thought that was going to be it for him. No, he comes out in 7-on-7, gets 7 reps, and he goes 7 for 7. I mean, and it wasn't like cheapies. Like, it wasn't like he was throwing it to the flat 5 yards. He was airing balls out 35 yards downfield to Connor Hayward and hitting Quez Watkins for 25 and throwing it over the middle to George Pickins for 15. Like, it was pretty decisive. And then you look at Justin Fields. I've talked about Justin Fields here. I'm willing to tell it how it is on Justin Fields. I know, he's the young quarterback and he's got these wild plays and these great tools. So you want him to be good if you're a fan. But I've told you guys, he's been pretty inconsistent. Not today. I mean, he was great today. He was consistent. I thought before, he had some happy feet and the inaccuracy and his eyes were sometimes light. I didn't see any of that today. He threw it all over the field. He threw it outside the numbers, in between the numbers, short, deep, middle, hitting it all over the place. He was on time. When he was going out of the pocket, I thought it was good decisions to use his legs, and you saw his legs. John, you saw him up close and personal. I told you last week, when you see him up close and personal, he looks like a linebacker.
Right.
I mean, and you saw him today. I'm sure you saw that. Justin Fields,
What does that tell you, the development that you saw over the first 5 days of practice with Justin Fields? Is it coaching? Is he watching himself on film? What are they cleaning up with him?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, 5 is still a short sample size. So sometimes it's just, maybe he had a really good day today. He's feeling it. But it can be improvement. And, I think he's starting to get more comfortable in this offense. He's starting to build chemistry with guys. When you work first team, he'd been second team all spring. So he wasn't necessarily always working with Calvin Austin, George Pickens, and Van Jefferson, and Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Pat Freiermuth. And so after 4 days and then 5 days, your 5th day, you really build a nice rapport with it. And, I like the Steelers did a nice job today. Russell Wilson's still building back to full participation from that calf injury. But the Steelers did a nice job today of giving Justin Fields as many looks as he could, different looks, different kind of styles that they could see on defense. And so I think it's an improvement. It's getting comfortable. And I think you're seeing guys kind of embrace him too. Russell Wilson's obviously kind of the leader of that offense. Like, you can see he kind of rallies the troops. But I also think when he was out, I thought Justin Fields also did a good job of rallying troops. So these are 2 guys that have been, bearers of the franchise standard before for other franchises. And so they're acting like it. We're seeing it.
Is this me reading something into it, but the fact that Fields knew that Wilson was going to get some meaningful reps today, did he want to elevate himself because of that?
Well, I mean, if Wilson were healthy after day 1, I don't think Justin Fields would have had nearly as many first-team snaps. So I don't think it was just specifically today. But I did say on Sunday, I said, once Russell Wilson comes in, you're going to see a consistency factor that I didn't think Justin Fields would be able to match. Well, I was wrong today. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson was perfect 7 for 7. I'm not sure Justin Fields had maybe 1 or 2 incompletions, and they work on him all day. Nothing was. People was putting them all perfectly. So I'm sure some of it was motivation, but you got to understand when you're Justin Fields and you're the guy that is hurt, that was in pole position. How do you eat that up? I mean, you have to elevate yourself to a standard. You have to continue elevating yourself to another level. He did, and so he's gotten better. I thought his first day was probably his worst day, and I think that's a good thing, right? The second day I think it was still shaky. Third day got a little better. Fourth day I think we started to see it, and then fifth day this was kind of where he put it all together. This was Justin Fields at his best today.
A positive upward trend.
Right.
Let me ask you about Wilson, because we saw the arm, we saw the accuracy, but how did the mobility look given that calf tweak that he got the first day in camp pushing a weighted sled as part of the conditioning program?
Yeah. They didn't really do much with him. Like anything where he would have to move, 7 shots or anything, 7-on-7 he can do because there's no pass rush. So he doesn't have any fear of being touched by anybody. They're being cautious with it. He's going through stretch lines, but he's not doing the sprint part of the stretch lines. So anything that requires explosive movement, running, we're not really seeing it. So to answer your question, I don't think we know yet. I think he's getting closer, obviously. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting him out there and, giving him these more reps. But I do think that's going to be a big question because clearly the quarterback run game is going to be a big part of this game, going to be a big part of this offense. Justin Fields is showing it. Even with Russell Wilson, he's 35 years old, but he can still run. That's part of his game, so it will be part of it regardless. So that's going to be something to watch, but I don't think we're going to know that for a while. I mean, they're calling it tightness, but let's be real here. It was a strain. And so, they got to be cautious with that. We've seen this in the past. Calf strains linger. And while I don't think this is on the level of a Burrow injury from last year, even an Aaron Rodgers injury, both of those guys had calf strains that kept them out upwards of a month. I don't think we're going to see that, Russell Wilson. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be out here right now. I do think we're going to have to wait a little bit to see where the mobility factor is, but that's obviously a huge part of his game. All of it.
Right, and we certainly want them to be cautious because in both of those latter cases, this was a bug that bit early and then derailed both of their seasons.
Burrow retweaked his calf at some point during the season. Obviously, it was the wrist injury that ended his season, but the calf was always an issue, and Joe Burrow lives off going outside the structure, winning by going on the run, and Russell Wilson wins by doing that. Obviously, you know what happened with Aaron Rodgers, and turned his Achilles right away.
First series of the season.
Right, so
regular season.
You got to be cautious with calf strains because we've seen it in the past how these things are tough to deal with. But to their credit, I think they're doing a good job with getting him enough reps, building him up, while also keeping Justin Fields kind of in this spot where he can really take advantage of Russell Wilson being out. Because with Russell Wilson out, what they're getting to do is they are getting to evaluate Justin Fields day in, day out, how he does these things. So let's say Russell Wilson does start week 1 even. Guess what? They're going to have a lot better feel now for what Justin Fields can do. I think it's going to help them. When you're talking about this murky quarterback situation, Justin Fields getting these many reps also helps them a lot.
And I was up with some fans in the stands looking at the quarterback situation unfold. As fans were looking at Justin Fields, they see certain packages where he's going to come in. That's what they're expecting. Is that possible?
It should be. I mean, so I think we all saw the read option to win 7 shots today.
Right.
Justin Fields just beating Joey Porter Jr. to the pylon. We saw him outrun Landon Roberts. I've seen him do things where he just has elite speed at the position, but it's not just elite speed because you turn on the film and you see he's a great tackle breaker. And so he's one of, in my opinion, the top 3 best running quarterbacks in the NFL. I think right now, you can probably put it, you can easily make a top 5, and it's going to include Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. You're going to have Josh Allen in there. You're going to have all those guys in there. I think Justin Fields is right in there, and he's such a dynamic player. So even if Russell Wilson's the starter, I think they would be doing themselves a disservice to not put Justin Fields in a package, at least in the red zone. I really think you run read option. That was the first play of this camp. Read option was to Najee Harris or Justin Fields. I just think that's a two-way go. I mean, that's a tough thing to defend as a defense.
That would be very, very nice. Now, something that was not nice, and Nick, you were down on the field, you saw it up close. We have the rookie out of the maize and blue of Michigan, who had some really nice days in camp leading up to today, Roman Wilson, who early in this padded practice went down. What did you see? What are they saying? And what are the ramifications of a thin position for the Steelers?
Yeah, well, right in front of me, they ran that jet sweep to the boundary and got rolled up on by Anthony Avery. Really just kind of tackled him from behind and, rolled up on him. Left ankle they were looking at right away, and then he got carted off shortly thereafter. I didn't see him get carted off. I went over to watch backs on backers and all those other drills. But I did see him go down. I saw them look at it. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. Hearing that he's in a lot of pain. They're doing all the x-rays, tests, et cetera, et cetera. Mike Tomlin didn't sound too optimistic. I mean, he said, they're evaluating it and they're going to see the length of absence that he's going to have. I mean, when you're talking about the length of absence, seems like you might know something there. And it did sound like, this is going to be a 1 or 2 day thing. I personally am not going to expect Roman Wilson back this week. That's what I'll say. We'll see. The first preseason game is 10 days away. I'm not sure if we're going to see Roman Wilson for that game.
And it talked about a rookie at the receiver position and missing these days of camp and perhaps the first preseason game. How much of a setback is this at this position and being a rookie?
It's a big setback for Roman Wilson because I think, he had a rough spring. He was really sick in the spring too. To the point where in the spring, he would take a rep and then go off and just throw up on the sideline. He lost probably. He got thin during the spring, and now he's kind of back to where he was in the summer. And so he's playing really well right now. He was playing extremely well. He caught everything his way. He was going to be the starting slot receiver, I think, week 1. We'll see if that's going to be the thing now. I still think he brings a certain set of skills no one else does with his toughness, his speed, his explosiveness. But we got to see what the ankle injury is first. Is it just a classic sprain? Is it a high ankle? What is it? Is it more of a foot injury? It could be a number of things. So that's going to be kind of their big thing, is figuring out how this affects Roman Wilson. But I think this is an opportunity for the other guys too, right? Calvin Austin III, I think, is going to be the guy who's going to play a lot. We saw him play a lot today, outside slot. I think he'll be right now. I think Calvin Austin's going to be the wide receiver 2, and that's not necessarily because he's running just as wide receiver 2. Van Jefferson's running as much wide receiver 2 as he is right now. I think Calvin Austin's been better, to be quite honest with you. He's been the second best wide receiver from the time they came to OTAs to now. And so this is going to be a big opportunity for him. And then they need someone else to step up. Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, someone in that room. They need someone to emerge. And so, it's going to affect Roman Wilson. It's probably going to affect his early playing time. Because I really think he had a chance to be wide receiver 2 if he kept it up. I really do. I think he was on that trajectory.
With Calvin Austin, because he's pretty short statured, right? And the prototypical NFL receiver, at least your number 2, they're bigger and bigger guys, and they're growing the cornerbacks bigger. How much of a disadvantage? I know he has the speed, but the size,
It's not typical, right? You don't see guys that he's 5'8", 5'9", playing on the outside, but he can. He's just quick enough. If you have the ability to win off the line, you can do that. And so, Calvin Austin's going to have to really own the little things in his game. Here's the thing. Calvin Austin has the releases to defeat press coverage. That's the first thing if you want to play outside. If you can't defeat press coverage and defeat, these bigger corners that are going to really get into you, this is Roman Wilson's big issue that, I really wanted to see in pads. We didn't get to see it today. I wanted to see him against Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice and Darius Rush, and I wanted to see them press it. And I wanted to see him, how do you deal with this? This is why Roman Wilson was a slot guy coming out first, and then they would kind of see what he would do against press. But Calvin Austin's always been pretty good against press. So that's what's allowed him to play outside and inside. The difference between Calvin Austin, being a successful receiver at this point has been can he polish his route running? And specifically his intermediate and kind of these short routes. We know he can win deep. You saw what he did last year in Vegas, but it didn't pop up again because teams would just play him 15 yards off because they didn't have to worry about him underneath. And so that's been the big thing with Calvin Austin. When you see him win this year, it's been just as much underneath, in the middle. And so he doesn't have to be a high usage guy. He could have 40 receptions and be a 20-yard per catch guy. I mean, that could be a legitimate thing for him. So it doesn't matter if he's getting 10 targets a game. If he gets 5, catches 3 of them, has 80 yards and a touchdown, I don't think anyone's going to be mad at that. So I think that's going to be the big thing is, can he threaten the underneath stuff so corners have to worry about him underneath, and then that opens up the deep stuff. And so that's really where it's going to come down to for Calvin Austin. But he can win outside. He can handle press coverage. He's just so quick, and he's got this kind of physical grit to him that allows him to beat that. So I don't have any worries about him on the outside. He's shown the ability to do it. It's going to be, can you take that route running step? If he can, it's going to be an unorthodox top 3. Like if the top 3 is Wilson, Austin, Pickens, it's a very unorthodox top 3, especially for Arthur Smith's offense, because you know how much Arthur Smith's offense values these condensed splits, blocking, etc. But if they're the 3 best, they're the 3 best, and they should be playing.
Now, speaking of size, the one guy who has it, obviously a different position, tight end, Pat Freiermuth. I hear a lot of talk that he could be, quote, the number 2 receiver in this Arthur Smith offense.
I think it's real. They move them all around the formation. And if you were kind of looking at the personnel they were using today, lots of 2 to 3 tight ends. He's just on the field a lot. He's on the field with Darnell Washington and Connor Hayward and Michael Pruitt. There's just a lot of different packages that they use for tight ends. And so he plays all over the formation. He's a really short-handed player. And so if you need to go underneath, because we expect this offense, John, you probably picked up on this too. They're going to be a run-first team, and what they're going to try to do off the run action is pop it right behind you. They're going to hit these big crossers, these over routes, hit deep balls. It's going to try and create explosive plays with the pass game off play action. And so he fits perfectly into that philosophy. So I think he's going to be a big, big target, and he probably will be the second most targeted guy on the team. I don't think that's going to be crazy. I think we all expect the most targeted guy on the team to be George Pickens. But I do think, Pat Freiermuth, because as I talked about, Calvin Austin is the wide receiver too. He's not a high usage too. He's a smaller guy that kind of wins deep, could win underneath, because if you threaten that underneath, he'll get some stuff, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to consistently be a 10 target a game guy. Roman Wilson is probably not going to have the raw playing time to outsnap Pat Freiermuth. So I think naturally he's going to be, the second most targeted guy. I don't love the verbiage of calling him wide receiver 2 in the offense, because he's a diverse player in the offense. He is pass target 2, though. I would agree with that.
Okay. Now, let me ask you about the aforementioned George Pickens, who had another Pickens perfect catch. But a couple days ago in training camp, he also had somewhat of a temper tantrum. And we've seen that before out of him. And it caused some on Twitter or whatever it is, X or, social media, to say, this guy still needs to grow up. Where are we at in the maturation of George Pickens in a town where we've seen our share of diva receivers and we don't want to see anymore?
I hate to say it, but George is who he is. I think George plays with an edge. I think he's a really smart guy. I've seen a lot of people call him dumb. There's a lot of things that I think George Pickens can be described as. I don't think dumb is one. He's a smart dude. I think, the tantrum is something of a competitive streak coming out. I don't want to make a huge deal out of competitiveness in this environment. Now, if you want to throw it with the past pattern, George Pickens, I think you can make a deal out of it. But I will say this, that was day 1. Since then, he's been coached very hard by Zach Azzani, the wide receivers coach. He's taken to it. We talked to him. He seems to like it. He was coached hard at Georgia under Kirby Smart, so it's not like a foreign concept to him. So I don't want to make, a huge deal out of this thing between Azani and Pickins, because I don't think it's necessarily something we have a pattern for yet. But I do think one of the big things that we need to see out of George Pickens is that maturation, is him being a leader. And so I really think he is the leader of the room. I know there's guys that are older than him in that room, but he's the best player. Guys are going to go to him. So he is the leader of the room. And so I want to see that kind of maturation, because I do think his maturation, how he handles frustrations, the double teams are going to be coming this year. So he might not, there are going to probably be games where, hey, maybe you don't get the ball a ton because you might be doubled all game. And so it's how he handles that, I think, is going to be big. And so when we're talking about his future with the team, I think George Pickens definitely has to take a step forward with his attitude there. But I also don't want to make, a huge deal out of something that, to be quite honest, I don't think is a massive deal right now. Mm-hmm. I don't see it.
And I'm not trying to create controversy, far be it from me. Speaking of what Steelers fans, Lunch Pail Steelers fans like to see is the trenches, the big guys, the linebackers, the defensive linemen, the beef on the offensive line, and you love that as well.
I do.
He likes him some beef, so let's talk about the beefs.
Let's talk about it, man. I watched Backs on Backers today, defensive line, O-line, one-on-ones. This is my favorite stuff today. I love Backs on Backers. You can hear the pads popping. Let's start with Backs on Backers. A few things that I saw. First of all, I do not understand how Jaylen Warren blocks as good as he does for his size. I just don't get it. He is 5'8", 215, all muscle. He popped Peyton Wilson, just right under the chin today. You could hear it. Welcome to the NFL, by the way, for Peyton Wilson.
Leverage. The guy has that low center of gravity. Leverage.
Yeah, he stunned Patrick Queen twice today. Jaylen Warren, man, just an awesome pass pro. I really like the series between Landon Roberts and Najee Harris. I think they split it 2-2. Those are two really hard-nosed football players. Najee Harris, by the way, ran really hard today in 7 shots. He had a few really good runs to get into the end zone. There were some other guys that stuck out to me as well. On the defensive side, I really thought Nick Herbig looked good. He's just so quick. And, I saw him in O-line, too. Really he had the cleanest win over Troy Fautanu today. And just using his quickness and inside rip, he's really, I think, ready for a step up in year 2. And so Backs on Backers, always fun. Darnell Washington was dispatching the linebackers like it was his job. They just could not move him. And I think Darnell Washington is not going to be a high usage passing in guy really ever. I think he's going to be a blocker first. Hey, man, he was a mountain today. I couldn't get by him. In terms of the O-line, D-line one-on-ones, Fautanu was the star of these.
The number 1 draft pick.
100%. They put him up against TJ Watt 3 times. I think the first time he probably held TJ, but the second and third reps, clean wins for Fautanu. The second one, TJ kind of tried to rip through him, and he stymied him, and then he tried to get around him on the next one. He ran him right around the bed. It was clear wins for him.
So break down what is it? The leverage? Is it the foot moves? It's
a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. He's got a unique build. He's not the tallest guy at tackle, but he's very long. He's very fluid. I think that's another really important thing. When you're that fluid and you can move like that, the sky's the limit. I think he's one of the more athletic tackles that we've seen come out in recent memory. I think there's 2 absolute freaks at offensive tackle. Robert Jones is a great athlete too, but his foot quickness, and then you look at his hand placement. He puts the hands and the feet together. I think that's a really big thing that guys sometimes don't do. They maybe get out in front of themselves and get off balance because maybe their strike is too far out, or the feet are too wide so you can just expose their chest so you can run right through them. He doesn't do a lot of these things. So he's very polished for a rookie, and it makes sense. He was at Washington for a pretty long time, and so he's just really polished, and that's what allows him to work. And so you see it. He does have some issues, it seemed like, with smaller guys because they put Watt against him, and then they brought him out for 3 more reps against Nick Herbig, who I talked about had that super clean win against them. And then Kyron Johnson. Kyron Johnson is kind of the sleeper on the roster who probably might be the outside linebacker 4 but he's 5'11" for an outside linebacker. I mean, you don't see that very often, but he's super explosive, super bendy, and he got under fall tolerance. So, you know, how he kind of reacts to these different types of guys, I think, is going to be part of his growth pattern. I really like testing him with different types of guys.
It is kind of cool.
And so we'll see. But, you know, the fact that he handled TJ Watt is just, I mean, that's a big time plus for him. And then, you know,
that was something Broderick Jones didn't do it initially in camp, right? He kind of worked his way up to that.
Right. And I hope, you know, I know Falatau's playing at right tackle, but I do want to see him go up against Alex Highsmith because I think Highsmith has just such a deep bag of moves. I want to see what he can do against him. And then you look, you know, at Zach Frazier, the rookie out of West Virginia. I said I was whelmed by him. I'm still whelmed. I'm not really overwhelmed. I'm not underwhelmed. Man, he had some issue with power today. Montravius Adams got into his chest a little bit. You go back and watch his film against Texas, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, a first-round pick and a second-round pick out of Texas. Both those guys really gave him some trouble in that game. It's probably his worst game of the year, to be quite honest with you. And I thought he opened his chest up a little bit again. But I thought as the practice went on in those reps, so he got Adams first, then he battled a little bit with Leal and Benton, and he started to kind of figure things out a little bit. And so I thought I'm interested to see how he grows. The book's not even close to being written on Zach Frazier. It's just he's growing, and so that's, you know, where the rookie offensive linemen live. We talked about Kyron Johnson. I really think he's making a statement. He continues to win at outside linebacker 4. He's one of these undersized guys the Steelers seem to be liking right now. He'll be a good special teamer too if they want him to be. Outside of that, you talk about the interior D line. You know, not just in one-on-ones, but I thought in the team run, they really dominated. You know, Montravius Adams had a really good day. I think DeMarvin Leal still continued a hot start. Man, this third-round pick from 2 years ago, people were tabbing him to get cut. You want to talk about a guy out here to make a statement. I mean, he's been on a scorcher these first 5 days. And because Dean Lowry, one of their big free agent additions in D-line, is hurt right now and on the PUP list, they are currently allowing him to run first team. He keeps playing well. So, you know, even Isaiah Loudermilk had some flashes today. So good day for the D-line. You know, a lot of people will kind of ask me if I think the depth D-line is an issue. Well, I understand why, but today, it's a good first impression in pads for sure.
Yeah, because I know we like the edge pressure on the quarterback. Is the D-line going to be something that can collapse the pocket as well?
Yeah, we'll see. I think if the depth guys show out today, we'll see more from Benton Ogun, Joby, and Cam later. But I do think there's upside to that group. If they hit on Leal, and Leal starts to play at the level he was supposed to play when they drafted him, and sometimes with those tweener guys, he was a guy that played outside and inside of college, and the Steelers never fully put him inside until this year, where he looks like an interior defensive lineman now. He looks like a 5-tech. He looks like a 3-tech full-time. Sometimes it takes those guys 3 to 4 years to really click. This is year 3. Maybe this is the light going on for DeMarvin Leal. It would be so huge if they can get him. His pass rush upside's the highest in that group after the top 3.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. We are at training camp, and we're actually going to be tag teaming on a story about the state of Steeler Nation in 2024. I mean, we've gone through the Kenny Pickett era, which had a lot of promise, and then, that ending where he's now in Eagles uniform. We have 2 new quarterbacks. We have some new faces, both rookies and some big free agent signings. This 2024 team is coming together. So how does Steeler Nation feel about it? We're going to answer those questions in this story probably next week. We're going to let this bake a little bit, but we're trying to take the pulse of the Steelers Nation, playoff deprived Steeler Nation. How are they feeling about this 2024 edition of your Pittsburgh Steelers? And of course, we'll have you every Tuesday on the big Breakdown Podcast, the Steelers Breakdown Podcast from PennLive. Till next time.